Thank you very much, Michelle. Jenny and I are really excited to be here. I am going to share my screen, and as I'm doing that, just bring attention to the welcome note that I put in the chat session. Like Michelle said, we do encourage you to use the chat with us today. We'll be checking in with that. So as Michelle said, I'm Robin Eichert, and I'm here with Jeni Callihan. We are both really, really excited about this bonus session. I think we're here with a lot of planners because you were the early registrants who signed up and were able to take advantage of this. So thank you, Michelle, for making it possible for all of us to be here. And Jeni and I both feel extremely passionate about this topic. We were especially drawn to present at this conference because of the theme, which is this staying strong in this new decade of thrivability. We see a clear connection between organizations that are agile and those that are thriving. Plus, our ears really perked up when we heard Michelle Holliday, of course, the keynote speaker, who was awesome, talk about really our need to have courageous conversations and to have practice grounds, to create these practice grounds where we can bring out the best in each of us individually and collectively, how our ecosystems are related and rely on each other. So you'll hear from us today, yes, with a confession or two, how important it is for us to become aware and act upon those vital perspectives to become agile. So I know many, if not all of you, have been hearing the need for agile organizations, and there's no doubt that you all are finding ways to be agile. We've had to the last few months. But today's session that we entitled Confessions of an EQ Insider, Why Agility Matters Most Now, may never be more relevant. So I'm going to jump right in and talk about what we're going to share, what we're going to cover. We're going to start with the rising need for agile organizations and make that connection between emotional intelligence and agility. Then we're going to give you a framework for which you can become more agile, you and those in your organizations. And we're going to give you a chance to try it out within the hour today. And just a heads up, one of the first exercises that Jeni will be walking us through, we're going to ask you to grab a clean sheet of paper. So just know that that's coming, if that's nearby. And so then we're also, as we close, we're going to give you some very actionable steps and ways that we can continue to help you become more agile. So here we go. Let's get started. So this idea of agility is no longer a buzzword, it's a reality. But why is the need for agility so great now? It's because we have these macro forces that are occurring. Advancing technologies, relentless competition, workforce diversity. Not to mention the very real economic and human game changers that we can't predict or control. And so it's so important that we think about this need for agility and how crucial it is for our outcomes in our organizations. What we see now is that we're all being asked to be primed for what's being called the VUCA environment, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. But in order to thrive, we need to move out of that and towards the things that we see on the right, which is having a vision, understanding, clarity, and yes, of course, agility. So we have some data that's going to put this into perspective, and this data was collected by Wiley & Sons. You probably are familiar with Wiley, even if it's off your, I'm confident that if you looked on your bookshelf, you would find some titles that are published by Wiley. They started as a book publisher more than 200 years ago, so obviously been around, successful in that vein, and they are a leader in corporate training. But they've also moved into some other critical spaces. Research, they're really a pioneer in research. And on topics that are relevant to social good, like environment, medical, technical, other scholarly topics. So recently, the Consumer Insights Group of Wiley researched 2,500 business professionals to get a handle on this need for agility. And what they found is that agility may be the core competencies that organizations are looking to develop. And the statistics you see in front of you are the metrics, which is 90% of respondents said that agility is more important to their own success now than it was 5 years ago. And 95% of leaders said that agility was more important to their organization's success than it was 5 years ago. So obviously these numbers are pretty compelling and convincing. So it's clear that agility is really required in order to navigate through this world of work that we're now in. Certainly organizations are doing things at a systems level to become agile, things like flatter organization, flatter reporting structures, more matrix, less hierarchy, bringing in agile project management systems that would help bring innovation to market faster, for example. And all of those things are important and needed. We know that organizations tend to be really good at bringing around different systems at that level. But one thing is really clear with even when we have organizations that bring in these new structures, and that is organizations cannot be agile without agile workers. Those are people who are resilient, adaptable, collaborative. And they're people who can not only withstand the fast pace that we're moving at these days, but embrace it. And that's really the driving insight behind the program that we're going to be talking about today, which is how building an agile organization starts with developing emotional intelligence. And you can see one more data point from the Wiley research, which is 97%. Can't get much higher than that. 97% of leaders agree that developing emotional intelligence is crucial to building an agile workforce. And so what we're going to share today is this new assessment-based learning program that teaches participants how to read an emotional and interpersonal needs of a situation and respond accordingly using active emotional intelligence development, and empowering your teams to respond appropriately. We know that these situations happen just absolutely daily. They're occurring. So talk about thrivability. And so now you can have the agile workforce that we have seen that we really need. So let's begin to see how. In the work that Jeni and I do, one of our tools is a model called Everything Disc, one that you probably are familiar with. It's a simple but not simplistic way to understand the needs of yourself and the priorities of others. And so it's a proven system that really helps two or more people have better working relationships, productive conflicts, and more. But now DISC has become agile. And so Jeni's going to reveal an overview of this agility approach, and so we can experience it together. So Jeni, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Robin. So nice to be here with everyone. And I'm actually going to start by sharing a confession. And this is just about my own work with agility and EQ. And I've really loved this work. Robin and I, as she said, we both just feel very passionate about it. I have really used this program for myself to understand what it takes to stretch to mindsets that are outside of my own comfort zone. And I wouldn't say that I have them down or that I've even developed actually a level of comfort with them. They can actually be quite uncomfortable sometimes. But I am trying them out, and I try them out in different situations, and I really like that. I recognize and feel, just really the power of practicing, and I'm willing to try it, even though, again, I'm not perfect at it. It's not always ideal. So, sort of a mix of confession but also just an acknowledgement that trying on new mindsets and really developing this agility takes practice. And I think it's important to live with the discomfort while I stretch and just understand more and more about myself in the workplace, my priorities in the workplace, and then again, you know, as Robin said, being able to recognize just how other people's priorities differ and how we can all work together more effectively. So there it is, confession. I think it's so cool. Again, really love this practice piece. So let's give you a chance to see where you fall on this in this DISC model, an exercise in understanding how you see yourself. And this will just help us to look at some of the basic differences amongst people. And I'm certain that most of you have wondered and pondered why it is that some of us, you know, where it's easier to work with some people and more difficult to work with others. So taking that blank piece of paper, if you would write at the top of it the words fast-paced and outspoken. This is on your screen now if you're joining by video. Fast-paced and outspoken at the top of your page. You can also consider the words assertive, active, dynamic, and bold. And then at the bottom of your page, write the words cautious and reflective. Cautious and reflective. The other words that you can consider along with cautious and reflective are moderate paced, calm, methodical, and thoughtful. And so as you consider this group of words, top of your page, bottom of your page, if you would circle the one that describes you the best. Describes you the best. And then let's think about a little bit of a different way to look at yourself in the workplace. And on the left side of your page, you'll write the words questioning and skeptical, considering also the words logic-focused, objective, reserved, and challenging. And then on the right side of your screen, the words accepting and warm. You can as well consider people-focused, empathizing, receptive, and agreeable as descriptions for this, these attributes. And so you now have questioning and skeptical, accepting, and warm. You'll also circle one of those. And then again, this gives you a new view at sort of seeing yourself, understanding yourself. If you circled the words questioning and skeptical along with fast-paced and outspoken, you'll write a D in the top left corner of your page. The D stands for dominance in the Everything DISC program. And then fast-paced and outspoken, along with accepting and warm, you would, if you circled those, you'll write an I in the top right corner of your page. Accepting and warm, cautious, and reflective, an S. And so the I stands for influence, the S stands for stability. Lastly, the C of the DISC model, questioning and skeptical, or cautious and reflective. The C stands for the conscientiousness style, conscientiousness style. And so this gives you a sense of the DISC model as a foundation to better understand similarities and differences amongst people's priorities in the workplace. And in just a moment, I'm going to share the 8 agile mindsets of this program and how this fits into our understanding also of ourselves. But one important thing that I want to mention just about the DISC model and this foundation that has been so powerful in the work that I've done with groups, specifically on these priorities, is that it gives people a common language that they can use to discuss issues in the workplace and understand themselves and others and the way that they do things, the priorities underlying each of these styles. So to continue to develop our understanding of this DISC model, and again as an introduction to the EQ, that's emotional intelligence mindsets in this program, let's watch a video that takes a little bit of a deeper dive.
We all have abilities that come naturally to us, certain skills or mindsets that are so second nature, so effortless. Using them feels like riding a bike. For Ava, that's keeping her cool when everyone around her is stressing out, or setting aside her own preferences long enough to really consider other points of view. Those are both kinds of emotional intelligence, but they aren't the only ones. Because the truth is, there are many different ways to be good at handling emotional and social situations. And people have different natural strengths. So, what are yours? That's where Agile EQ comes in. Using a tool called Everything Disc, Agile EQ provides a simple way to understand yourself and the kinds of emotional intelligence that may come naturally to you. Everything Disc describes 4 main styles. People with a D, or dominant style, are typically direct and firm. Their emotional intelligence really shines when they need to project confidence and persuade others. And they're usually good at speaking up for themselves. Those with an I, or influence style, are generally outgoing and enthusiastic. They're naturals at making connections wherever they go. And they tap into the energy in a room by paying attention to how people are feeling. People with an S, or steadiness style, are usually even-tempered and accommodating. They often excel at understanding where other people are coming from, and their calm, flexible approach helps keep conversations harmonious and collaborative. And finally, those with a C, or conscientiousness style, are typically analytical and reserved. Their EQ strengths involve stepping back and separating facts from their personal feelings, and they're often good at showing restraint, even in tense situations. You might have one of these styles or a blend of 2, like Ava, whose SC style means she has a combination of S and C traits. The strengths associated with that part of the disc map are probably easiest and most natural for her. But what about when Ava needs to, say, network with strangers or confront a coworker about a problem? In situations like these, she may have to reach for skills that don't come as naturally. And if she can't do that or doesn't think to try, that can create problems for her. Because sometimes our instinctive patterns don't work and actually end up boxing us in. Drawing on the principles of emotional intelligence, Agile EQ helps us discover our natural tendencies and recognize when to move beyond those familiar patterns. And that's what allows us to act, adapting to whatever situation we're facing. And that ability to adapt, to reach for a wider variety of responses, it's called agility. It's about stretching beyond our comfort zones when what's instinctive for us isn't enough. It means developing the flexibility to respond to different situations with the best possible approach, not just the one that's easiest. And really, the more agile we are in our responses, the more emotionally intelligent we become. And that empowers us to achieve things we never believed were possible, to enrich our relationships, and even to engage with the world in a new way.
Okay, great, thank you. And so as you saw in the video, there are 8 agile mindsets, and these are connected to the 4 basic styles that describe how people approach their work, specific to the idea of developing agility and emotional intelligence. You can now see this disc circle with the 8 mindsets around it on your screen. These 8 mindsets are available, and you can call on them to guide your interactions in the workplace. No one mindset is more valuable than the next. Rather, the needs of a particular situation, so these are social emotional situations in the workplace, will dictate which one of these is the most appropriate. Learning when and how to adopt each of these mindsets will let you take a more agile approach to interactions. And I have just a quick story. I did an individual consultation with someone just a couple of days ago. And if you look on your screen, and I know some people aren't joined by screen, so I will read these out. She was an empathizing mindset. That was the one that came naturally to her. We also call that her expert mindset, and that is defined as reaching out with compassion, seeking to understand people's emotional needs and struggles, and being supportive. And while we were doing this work in identifying her expert mindset, she decided to work on and practice the self-assured mindset, which is across the circle for her. That is defined as asserting your opinions and rights, projecting confidence in your ideas and abilities, and taking charge in situations. And one of the things that I love that she shared with me in this conversation was that as someone who is empathizing, she recalled being a part of a professional meeting in which she was amidst other colleagues, and everyone was going around a circle enthusiastically sharing their ideas. And she remembers having the thought that she would like to share her ideas, and she didn't have sort of the language and hadn't figured out how to really articulate why she wasn't sharing her ideas, but she then started to see it and understand it as a stretch, and that she could really feel what it was to be an expert at that empathizing mindset, and just how it was uncomfortable but very worthwhile for her to make that stretch and to start practicing and thinking about being more self-assured. So I loved that aha moment with her. I think you can all relate to just how satisfying it is to work with people when you have that kind of experience with them. So by increasing your comfort level with adopting these different mindsets, you can begin to increase your agility and therefore ability to navigate countless situations more effectively. So to understand this in a more practical way, and to understand this and sort of why we tend maybe not to do this sometimes, or why it's a stretch for us to do this sometimes, let's use another exercise that gives you a feel for what it's like to identify the mindset that comes more naturally for you based on your DISC style. And again, this is your expert mindset. And I want you to just imagine what it would be like to use another mindset around this circle that doesn't come as naturally, and in other words, requires a stretch for you. That word stretch is very important. And so if in the first exercise that we did together this morning, you were either a D or a C style, I want you to consider, and just for our purposes today, since we're going to just use two mindsets, consider and just feel into the idea that the resolute mindset may come a little bit more naturally to you. Again, I did read this before, but for those of you who are not looking at a screen, standing your ground in the face of opposition, speaking up about problems, and pushing through any resistance. And then for those of you that are the I or the S style, consider your expert mindset being the empathizing mindset, reaching out with compassion, seeking to understand people's emotional needs and struggles, and being supportive. And so now, as you consider these two mindsets, we'll use them to start to understand what are the obstacles that can get in your way when you attempt to stretch or change a behavior to meet the needs of a situation. As you're considering this, this mindset that you wrote down as your more natural response, or the one that you feel more expert at, start to consider what it would take to stretch. Okay, so if you are a D and a C, you are more fit for the natural, resolute mindset. Think about what it would take to try on the empathizing mindset. For those of you that are the I's and the S's, more natural with the empathizing qualities, what would it take for you to stretch to this resolute mindset?
Being resolute means standing your ground and not giving in, even when others may disagree with you. or when they're pushing you towards something that doesn't sit well with you. It's not about ego or just getting my way. It's about believing in something so strongly that I owe it to myself and to my team to not just cave in because someone else is louder or more opinionated. And I know that my opinion isn't the end all be all, but I think it's my responsibility to communicate my ideas as clearly as possible so that others can understand where I'm coming from. And yeah, it can feel nerve-wracking, even for me. But in that moment, my comfort is less important than making sure that I'm doing justice to my ideas. Like, for example, last week I'm working with a couple people on updating our cataloging system. They want to make as few changes as possible, but I disagree because I'm confident in the fact that if we make a few tweaks here and there, it'll make the whole system just a lot less of a hassle for everyone else. But almost immediately, they start listing off half a dozen reasons why we can't do this or that, pretty adamantly. So at this point, it would have been easy for me to say, okay, never mind, it's not worth it. But I really had thought these things through. So I stood by my opinion. And by hashing things out, we pushed each other to have a better conversation. And in the end, they actually did realize that, okay, yeah, maybe these ideas could work. And it wasn't an easy conversation to have, but it was absolutely worth it. So I think being resolute means it's about realizing that a little bit of tension is okay, even good. And it doesn't have to mean that you're putting down someone else for having a different idea than yours. I know for a lot of people, disagreeing really feels like you're fighting or causing problems. But for the most part, it's just about having a discussion. I think the trick is to let yourself hover in that uneasy space, even when you feel yourself wanting to cave in, even when you doubt yourself because someone is pushing back. Just hold on. You might change your position, but don't do it just because someone else is telling you to do it or pushing against you or because you want to escape the tension.
Okay, and so I am going to shift sort of fairly quickly to the I's and the S's, even though I would love to discuss that for a long time, because I don't know if you remember, but that's the mindset that that I shared with you in my confession I work toward, and that video actually really articulated some important things for me. So I think it's just really interesting stuff. But to go to the I's and the S's, and those that find a more natural fit with the empathizing mindset, if you would share some of the obstacles to stretching in the chat now, and Robin will go to that again.
Oh, great. Here's one already. Not being sure of how to properly articulate what you want to say so others understand.
Yeah, huge one. Huge for the empathizing mindset.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Fear of conflict, hurting the relationship. So true.
Yeah.
So again, I'm going to put up a few that we had tendency to build consensus.
Yeah. That's perfect for that empathizing person, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We want everyone to be happy.
Yes, we do.
Yes. Yes. And so Robin is also putting up some of the same obstacles that we mentioned before. And so they can both be the same and they can be different.
Mm-hmm. Someone else put not wanting to push others too hard. It's so true, right? For somebody who wants that everyone to feel, connected and together. Concern about offending someone else's ideas and or standing up for your ideas without emotion. How you were brought up. That's a great one.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Sort of expectations that were put down for us to be accommodating. Yeah. Hey, you're talking about my mother.
Yeah, and so let's also shift to a video that we'll watch about this empathizing mindset, because I love the way that these articulate some really practical things. And we'll switch to that. Robin will take us. Yes.
It's about making an effort to understand what someone's going through and then just trying to be there for them. All day, all around you, people are experiencing this whole range of emotions. Everything from struggles to pure excitement. but they might never talk about it. When you start to pay attention to those nonverbal cues or the way someone says something, you get a glimpse at who they really are. Like if someone suddenly goes quiet in a meeting or gives a comment that feels kind of forced, when I see that, I just want to reach out to try to understand and be that source of support and compassion for someone. One of the first jobs I ever had was working in this restaurant. And this one night it was chaos. Line out the door, understaffed, and one of the servers, he was just really off. Short with the runners, kind of impatient. So I'm thinking, what's going on with him? I was tempted just to avoid him the whole night. He's not normally like that. So I pulled him aside and I asked if he was okay. He started telling me about his son who was going through some health problems. And I just listened to him. And I said I couldn't imagine how hard that was. Really, it was just a 2-minute conversation, but offering that little bit of understanding, it's just this weight lifted when you know someone else gets it. And it helped me too. Instead of getting annoyed, I got some clarity about what was going through the guy's head. I think a big part of empathizing is being proactive. It's a whole lot easier to stay in my own world, to not spend the mental energy to consider how my tone could affect someone. But instead of thinking of it as extra processing, think of it as unlocking doors. It creates open spaces where someone can be more unguarded, where it's easier to understand them, and where you can find clarity. So to get there, listen. Don't just nod your head, really take it in and consider what the words mean. When someone sees you get it and you care, it can be powerful. You can make a real difference in their life.
Jeni, there were a couple of comments that came in the chat that were so good.
Yes, I saw those. Do you want to read them, Robin? So good.
Somebody said, I would love to have that person on my team.
Yep.
And then the idea of being proactive and making a move of connection. And one thing I just wanted to point out as we were thinking about the challenges from each of these two mindsets and how each of us do have a challenge, even though the specifics of them might be unique, we're all in this together and we all have our expert mindset, as Jeni explained, that's easier for us, but stretching is difficult no matter whether you're stretching one way or the other. If you're stretching, it's challenging. And we just wanted to acknowledge that no matter which mindset you are, there's value there, but there's the magic happens when we can more easily find ways to stretch. That's when I think we become our best selves.
Yeah. Yeah, and adopting a new mindset to be more effective in social emotional situations in the workplace is just, I mean, it's really an awesome tool. And again, not something that we have to be perfect at, but just to be willing to acknowledge and understand ourselves better and acknowledge and take the time to understand other people so that we can develop this. It is possible for everyone to develop agility. It is also accessible and possible for everyone to act in these 8 mindsets. It just takes practice. So I turn it back to you, Robin.
All right, thanks, Jeni. So as you saw, we had this opportunity to think about stretching and the value of that. The challenge also, because we are human and it can be difficult, and those obstacles are natural and common for all of us. But Jeni and I also know that it is very possible to accomplish this. We've seen it, and we're already hearing the need for it from the conference. And some of you probably have been following Michelle Holliday's work even before she was named as conference speaker. I've flipped through her book. I've got about halfway through it so far, but as I was scanning towards the end, this section about practice grounds was just really hit me, really resonated. This whole idea of the real challenge is to focus not only on changing our systems, but on changing ourselves along the way. And that's my confession. Sometimes I really have to be hit over the head with this, as much as this is my work and it's almost embarrassing to acknowledge it. And I feel like I have some emotional intelligence and intuition, but it's just so natural for us to think the other person has to be the one to make those changes. And one of the very first and significant times this impacted me was after adopting my dog, Grace, which Michelle had put the picture of Grace on the intro. And she started acting out in aggressive ways, and I didn't know how to work with her. And so I was referred to a vet who specialized in behavior issues. And my intent on going to this vet was to have the vet, solve this issue with the dog. The dog was the issue, or having the issues, and the vet would solve it. And then sitting in this room across from this vet, listening to her observations and suggestions, the light bulb went off, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is not about the dog. This is about me. I'm the one that needs to take the lead and make the change in order for Grace to be her best. And that's what we're really saying here, is providing the practice grounds for all of us to understand ourselves better, to take action, to have those courageous conversations, to move to a new way of being, is being agile. So this program, we feel like, offers a path to do that in a very accessible way. And so we want to continue this work together, and we have some opportunities that are no cost to you. It's our gift for you spending the time with us today. If you want to put in the chat your email address, I will send you the details so you don't have to worry about capturing all of this right now. Or you can email me separately. Either certainly is perfectly fine. But the very first thing we would recommend is for you to complete your own Agile EQ assessment. And what you'll get out of that is a 26-page profile report that identifies your expert mindsets and offers you some options for how to stretch. And it's valued at $145. We really want you to take advantage of this. And so Jeni and I are also offering or facilitating a virtual workshop next Monday and Wednesday. It's 2 90-minute sessions, again, free. I'll send you the promo code REFRESH to get you in free. But if the schedule just doesn't work, you certainly, we would love to have a phone review so we could help you create your action plan once you complete your own Agile EQ assessment. And then next, as it turns out, these days you know how it works. The world aligns. Wiley is hosting a showcase next Wednesday at, I think it's in the afternoon. It was at noon, but I think it's in the afternoon at 3, but we can send you the details. If you have others that you feel like would be interested in this material, we can help you invite them to that event as well. So I think we're on time to 11:59. Oh, good.
I know.
So we just really appreciate this opportunity. We loved talking about this, being with you. Conference is always awesome. And a big shout out to Michelle and Molly for all they have done to put this conference together, especially this session for us. It's very wonderful. So thank you.